رسول الله واشرح لي صدري ويسر لي امري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. Okay. In my presentation today I'm going to present the concept of scarcity from an empirical dimension. In doing so, I'm going to integrate theories from the field of social psychology in order to assess, evaluate the concept of scarcity. Okay, the title, as you can see, the effect of scarcity thinking on human wants. Okay, before we start, it's better or it's worthwhile to differentiate between three terms: the concept of scarcity, relative scarcity, and scarcity thinking. Okay, the concept of scarcity actually is a concept. What is a concept? The concept actually is a mental representation of what it exists in the external world. Okay. This is a concept. And usually when someone proposes a concept, it's universal and comprehensive. Relative scarcity actually is a condition. It's a condition, it's a phenomenon where we can see resources sometimes are limited to fulfill the human wants and needs. How about scarcity thinking? Scarcity thinking actually is a mental state of thinking. It states all the time there is always not enough for everyone to go around. Because we are disposing the scarcity thinking, that's why we triangulating theories from the field of social psychology. Okay, let's have a perspective. As you know, the concept of scarcity defines mainstream economics. How about heterodox economics? What are their views on the concept of scarcity? You see here, heterodox economists, they consider the concept of scarcity or relative scarcity as an object of mainstream economics which are ill-defined and doesn't have real-world existence. They usually define economics from the perspective of social process of providing for people needs, not merely choices in theories and scarcity. So it's like they consider scarcity a social product which can be abolished through social, economic, and change process. Okay? So also, Malthus and Robbins tend to postulate that the concept of scarcity as universal, whereby they ignore the possibility of sufficiency and abundance. Okay, now let's look at the scarcity from the perspective of social psychology. Okay, in the research of social psychology, they found that scarcity, when products are viewed from the scarcity perspective, it tends to enhance desirability, which means scarcity of products, when people think that, okay, when people look at the product as scarce, it tends to enhance their desirability, it tends to enhance their human wants. Okay, so that's now what is the implication of scarcity thinking from the perspective of social psychology. As I mentioned to you, let me just define to you how scarcity thinking is being defined. So scarcity thinking is best manifested as there is not enough for everyone to go around. Meaning that people perceive or people believe in scarcity. They evaluate their life in terms of what it lacks. With scarcity thinking, the focus is on what a person does not have, and this continues to be his or her experience of life. So as you can see, scarcity thinking, it has the same effect of scarcity in social psychology, where it makes people to be protective of what they have, and if they believe that the object is scarce, it will be valued, kept, sought, and consumed. So it will enhance also, somehow it enhances the human wants. So now the implication of scarcity thinking taking into account the religious perspective. So you see, scarcity enhances desirability in human wants. However, Islam and religion convey in advocate moderation in spending and minimization of human desires. So religion in the other way around, or in the other way, it conveys abundance rather than scarcity. So what is the main objective of this presentation? So the main objective of this presentation is to examine the effect of scarcity thinking on human wants in the context of a society that adheres to Islam in its practices. Therefore, we have developed a theoretical framework, okay, where we have three variables. We have the independent variable, Islamic religiosity, mediator, scarcity thinking, and the dependent variable, which is human wants. So we have three theories: principle of moderation, which explains the path, the indirect path Islamic religiosity to human wants. And we have the commodity theory from field of social psychology. It explains the path from scarcity thinking to human wants. And we have the theory of cognitive dissonance. The theory of cognitive dissonance explains, okay, whether the scarcity thinking mediates the relationship between Islamic religiosity and human wants. So the theory of cognitive dissonance states that there is a conflict or there is a mismatch between the belief of the people and their behavior. Later on, we are going to discuss it in the discussion. Okay, in the data, how did we collect the data? So data was collected through a structured questionnaire. It was implemented in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia. A non-probability sampling technique using purposive sampling method was adopted because this research is exploratory, because we want to explore. We don't have like empirical research that evaluate such kind of relationship. So an approximate of 450 questionnaires have been distributed to selected Muslim employees from different professional lines such as banks, private companies, hotels, and other organizations. Okay, this is actually the measurement model. We have adopted structural locational modeling in estimating the relationship between these three variables. So in the model measurement, as you can see, the model has been fed to the data, as you can see from the fit indices. Okay. So the CFI, TFI, all about 0.95, which shows a good fit to the data. The model fits the data. Then we go to the model estimation. So in the model estimation, we have found that scarcity, there is a direct relationship between scarcity thinking. There is an inverse relationship, opposite relationship between scarcity thinking and Islamic religiosity. At the same time, we have found that scarcity thinking enhances human wants. So it confirms the research in social psychology where scarcity enhances human wants, enhances desirability. Now, the contribution in this, or the main contribution in this presentation is to check whether scarcity thinking mediates the relationship between Islamic religiosity and human wants. And then we are going to look into a theory of cognitive dissonance to confirm that kind of mediation. So, the theory of cognitive dissonance, what it states that, there is a conflict between the belief and the behavior. For example, I believe, and I adhere to the condition or to the principle of moderation, where I should be moderate in my expenditure. Okay? However, when I go for shopping, my behavior will be other way around. Okay? I will tend to be excessive in my expenditure. So this is the theory of cognitive dissonance, which tries to explain the path between Islamic religiosity, scarcity thinking, and human wants. And we want to see whether scarcity thinking mediates this relationship between Islamic religiosity and human wants. What we have found? We have found that, you can check this one in the paper, okay, for the sake of time. You can find that there is an evidence of mediation of scarcity thinking between Islamic religiosity and human wants. So here, this theory of cognitive dissonance. So there is, when there is a conflict between the belief and the behavior, there is a dissonance. So now we want to know, if let's say scarcity thinking mediates the relationship between Islamic religiosity and human wants, it means scarcity thinking is causing the dissonance between my belief and my behavior. So my belief in moderation, in my behavior in excessive expenditure, there is a dissonance between them. What is the dissonance? It is scarcity thinking that makes this dissonance. So the same theory suggests two ways in order to reduce the dissonance. Okay, so you see here this theory, the cognitive dissonance theory, suggests two ways to reduce the importance of the dissonance belief, which is scarcity thinking. We have to reduce it. Okay, the second way is to add more consonant belief that outweigh the dissonant belief, or to change the dissonant belief so that they are no longer inconsistent. It means, by the other way around, reviving the belief. How to revive the belief? As you can see in the Quran, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala all the time, in talking about the resources, all the time, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala postulates abundance in several verses in the Quran. That way, that kind of verses will increase or will reduce the dissonance of scarcity thinking. People will tend to behave in abundance in the situation of phenomena of relative scarcity. even if the resources are short, okay, people will still think and believe that there is abundance. That are two ways that to reduce the dissonance of scarcity thinking, to return back to religion and to try to reduce the dissonance of scarcity thinking. Okay, so as you can see, religion advocates the belief in abundant thinking. Even in the literature of abundant thinking, it says abundant thinking promotes sharing, caring, cooperation in overcome scarcity. What's the abundance mentality or abundance thinking? Abundance thinking is when you think that there is enough for everyone to go around. Okay? So now, let us go to the ideological orientation of the concept of scarcity itself. Okay, let's go to Robin and Malthus. Okay, you can see here, in the ideological orientation of the concept of scarcity, I have quoted two statements, one from Malthus, the other one from Robbins, okay, which are familiar with the concept, which are familiar with scarcity. So here you can see Malthus. How can a God who is good, omniscient, and wise with scarcity for his creatures? This is Malthus. Robin, in the other hand, he said, life is short, nature is negative. So you can see that Malthus and Robin, they represent or they try to explain the external world based on their observation to the nature. So what they see, the nature is negatively, or the nature is shortage, there's a shortage in nature, so that they advocate that resources are always not enough to fulfill the unlimited human wants. However, if we integrate critical realism, okay, I like this philosophy because it somehow goes in accordance with religion. This critical realism was advocated by Roy Pascal. Okay? So this is what it claims, this critical realism. It claims that an entity can't exist independent of our identification of fate. Saying that an entity can't exist without our identification of it, it means that it exists without we, or without observing, or without someone observing, knowing, and constructing it. For example, I can see nature. I am the observer. Nature is in front of me. Okay? The reality of nature is independent from my observation of it. So let's say I can look at nature as negative, but the reality of nature is something else. That's why if we integrate critical realism, or if Malthus and Robbins view nature from the perspective of critical realism, they wouldn't have defined or they wouldn't have proposed the concept of scarcity. So now we go to this one, to the model, okay? You see here, scarcity thinking, it has three factors, okay? So scarcity thinking enhances human wants. In human wants, as you can see, there is two scenarios, okay? A scenario of obedience and scenario of disobedience. If let's say, I think in scarcity way, my human wants will be enhanced. So there will be an enhancement in the human wants. Then what will happen? The resources will not be enough to fulfill the unlimited human wants, and then relative scarcity will be the product. However, if people believe in obey Allah's rule of the principle of moderation, where the expenditure is moderate, okay, resources will somehow fulfill the human wants and needs, and it will lead to abundance or sufficiency. Okay? That's why Matthew said, okay, in his writing, that scarcity is a social product. Actually, it is created. It's a phenomenon. Relative scarcity is a phenomenon, which it can be abolished if, let's say, the human wants are moderated. So here, in conclusion, or before conclusion, let me just give the differentiation between the concept of scarcity and relative scarcity. So you see here the problem with most of us, okay, that we have confused between the concept between scarcity as a concept and scarcity as a phenomenon. Yes, scarcity as a phenomenon, it exists. Nobody denies, okay? Sometimes resources are not enough, okay, to fulfill human wants at a certain point of time. But when we talk about the concept of scarcity, we are making that condition permanent and universal, which it is not supposed to be. Okay? That's why in this presentation we have to differentiate between the concept of scarcity and relative scarcity. So in conclusion, what we can say that, okay, as you know that the concept of scarcity is one of the unresolved issues in Islamic economics. And since 1976, starting of the first conference of Islamic economic finance, there is no agreement between Islamic economists about the concept of scarcity. Okay? So in this presentation, I hope this presentation will solve this unresolved issue in Islamic economics. So as you can see, the concept of scarcity in the state of scarcity thinking contradicts Islamic religiosity, it contradicts religion, so it should not have any reference to Islamic economics. Therefore, okay, this paper called for isolating the concept of scarcity from economics. And hopefully by doing that, abundance will be realized, poverty will be eradicated, and science and sustainable development will be achieved. And I think Professor Zaman, he will talk about redefining economics and redefining Islamic economics, and I'm sure, okay, he's not going to define it from the scarcity perspective. Thank you very much.